inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep. I love everything. Fire spreading all around my room. My world's so bright, it's hard to breathe, but that's alright. Hush. Take my eyes open to force reality. Why can't you just let me eat my weight in glee? I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. Some days I feel skinnier than all the other days. Sometimes I can't tell if my body belongs to me. I love everything. Fire spreading all around my room. My world's so bright, it's hard to breathe, but that's alright.
Oh my god!
Yo guys, what is up? Moxsy here on Borderlands 3 video, and today we have updated Ricochet, which is my favorite Amara build ever since I created it, and it is still my favorite build, which says a lot because we make a lot of crazy builds on this channel. I absolutely love this build. I can't stop playing it, and it is now even better than before with new weapons, updated mechanics, and new gear. Now, real quick before we get into the skill tree and everything that's changed with this build, gotta quickly say that most of my viewers are not subscribed, and if you want to do me a favor and are enjoying the builds and content, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Lastly, I stream every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time over at Twitch. If you guys want to see the testing of these builds live and the creation and how everything that goes into them, make sure to follow me over at Twitch at twitch.tv/Moxsy. All right, plug over. Let's get into the build. So this is the new skill tree. Have it up on the screen right now. Now you'll notice some things have changed immediately, and there are new gear in the game that is allowing us to change our skill tree and still maintain the same amount of DPS. Now, where those new points went for the most part is into Transcend. I'll be talking about all of these skills in a brief second, but Transcend is going to allow us to have increased critical hit damage, which increases the bossing ability of this build and increases the overall DPS. Now, you'll note some other changes, and we're going to talk about all of those in a second. Brief summary of the mechanics of this build. A lot of you already know this, but Ricochet, which uses multiple elements in multiple different instances of elemental damage to create multiple projectiles to murder entire rooms of enemies with single shots. It is one of the fastest, if not the fastest, clear speed build in the game, and uses primarily the projectile recursion to clear rooms, one-shot bosses, anything you want to do with this weapon. It is absolutely crazy. Now, there are other weapons that we're going to be showcasing today that are also absolutely awesome. A lot of them are DLC weapons because those are new weapons, and I wanted to talk about them. And we're using new DLC gear. If you don't have the DLC, the old Ricochet Witch build still works just fine. I would just change the skill points and use the same gear. But for those of you that have the DLC, I want to show off what the new things that we can do are. Now, let's talk about this skill tree. Now, the biggest change in our red tree is that we are no longer speccing Conflux. Pretty much everything else is the same here, but no conflux. Now we were using conflux before with an elemental projector to proc multiple elements on ourselves, and that was allowing us to do boosted elemental damage. Now that also gave our screen crazy screen shake and also made it harder to aim and was very, very loud and annoying. So for general use of this build, we are no longer using conflux and we are no longer using an elemental projector. Now this Pearl of Ineffable Knowledge is a big change, and if you haven't seen my video on it, that video will be right up there. But this artifact is absolutely disgusting and is going to be, or is the new meta for all builds. Now, basically, the Pearl of Ineffable Knowledge gives us 155% increased weapon damage while using it. Now, it works like the consecutive hits anointment. So you may be thinking, hey Moxsy, why would we be using this on Amara? She doesn't have unlimited sustain or ammo sustain like Moze does. And if we're not constantly damaging enemies, we'll lose this, and then we'll have less damage than we would have had with an elemental projector. You're right, but wrong at the same time. Amara can keep up the 155% increased weapon damage from the Pearl 100% of the time without ever shooting her weapon, and all she needs to do is this. Self-dot from the driver procs the Pearl artifact, giving us 155% increased weapon damage all the time without shooting our weapon. You run around, 155% increased weapon damage. This is disgusting. I cannot say enough how gross this is and how crazy the DPS increase is on a build that did not need another increase in DPS, but it's here. If the knowledge or the Pearl gets nerfed, we'll go back to the elemental projector, but for now it's here to stay, and it's disgusting, so we're gonna use it. Now let's get back to our skill tree. Once again, not using infusion. Infusion is a trap for most Amara builds. You're gonna lose your dot damage, you're gonna lose overkill potential, and I recommend not using it. I will have a build out with 5 out of 5 into infusion very shortly that uses it in a smart way, but it has no place in Ricochet Witch, and we're not going to be using it. Now, the rest of the points here are pretty self-explanatory. Anima for a little more dot on us, Tempest, Dread for when we do phase grass someone, and we're going to be talking about why Dread is actually kind of useful now, because before we didn't really need it that much. Deep Well, Indiscriminate for more Ricochet, Sustainment, Forceful Expression. Now, one of the biggest things about using the Pearl that changes up the way that you have to think about this build is before, and I talked about this so much, the importance of this, but it was very, very important to match your element of your weapon with your action skill element, because otherwise you wouldn't get 90% increased damage with your elemental projector. It's now 103%, by the way, if you have a 57. But you would not be getting a bonus or big use out of the elemental projector if you weren't using a matching gun with matching action skill. That no longer applies. So using the Pearl allows us to use radiation weapons way more effectively, because we don't need to proc our same matching dot on ourselves. This allows for increased versatility of this build, because you can use whatever you want, and you can switch up your action skill to whatever element you want. If you want to use corrosive against Wotan and whatever weapon, you can do that. If you want to use shock, if you want to use fire, it doesn't really matter, because the dot on ourselves doesn't matter except for forceful expression, which is giving us bonus element, but it doesn't have to match, which increases the build's DPS tremendously with cryo and radiation weapons, because before we couldn't make great use out of them. So that is super, super awesome and increases the overall versatility of this build. Next up, green tree, real quick, personal space, root to rise. I don't want to take too long with this. So personal space, bonus damage. It's not actually 12%, it's 18% increased bonus damage. Personal space is gross. It's a gross skill. It increases our damage by a ton. Definitely grab it. Arms deal for splash damage reduction. A lot of the weapons we use with this build do splash damage, even the recursion. Helping hands, mindfulness. Now, I have done DPS testing. I have done a double capstone build with Amara and no points into mindfulness, but still using a driver. This build puts out more damage than even if you were doing double capstone, just because of how ridiculous the scaling is with the driver with mindfulness. So genuinely 6 out of 3 here. Make sure it happens because it is an awesome amount of damage. And Guardian Angel, if we ever go down, if you ever screw up, if you shoot yourself in the foot with the lob, you're right back up because you're Amara and nothing can actually kill you. Lastly, we're grabbing Transcend. Now, Transcend is the pickup with the new skill tree. Transcend is going to give us critical hit damage when we use our action skill. Now, this build does Fate Grasping a lot and genuinely doesn't actually ever need to use its action skill. But if you do want to kill a boss even faster, if you want to go farm and not switch to Transcended Amara, you can switch to Phase Cast. Use Phase Cast weapon damage weapons, or Phase Slam, either or, and get Transcend to increase your critical hit damage. This is very awesome because critical hit damage is a big increase in our DPS and something we couldn't grab before. So now this build is amazing for mobbing, and it can do bossing very well. Now, it doesn't put out as much DPS as Transcended Amara. That is my boss killing build. That'll be updated shortly. But this build does do mobbing better than any other build I've seen. Lastly, for guns, gear, and weapons, we have the Old God Shield. Now, this is what I believe to be the best legendary shield in the game for Amara players and for most characters. It's going to give us increased elemental damage, and when we get it with an ASC, we're going to get increased elemental damage and furthermore radiation damage and increased elemental damage resistance. This is so nice. This is such a good shield, especially for Amara. Now, don't be mistaken. This is not bonus damage. If you're not using, for example, with this shield, if you're not using incendiary damage, you get no bonuses from this shield. But if you are using incendiary damage, this shield is amazing. I would like to have a increased shock damage one because I seem to always be using shock or radiation. So not my perfect shield, but we're working on it. Next, we got It's Piss for debuff enemies. I don't really throw this that often, but if you guys want to do even more damage, in It's Piss with bonus elemental damage is great. Lastly, Spiritual Driver. You guys know what it is. +3 mindfulness and any other bonuses you guys want. The weapons that we can use amazingly well with this, of course, is the Recursion, the best weapon for this build, and can kill bosses and mobs with a single shot. Other weapons that are really cool is the Clairvoyance Assault Rifle. Now, this doesn't function like any super better on Amara, but it's a really strong weapon. And because it's so strong and this is such a strong build, this assault rifle, you can kill Graveward in one clip with this thing. It's absolutely disgusting, the amount of damage you could put out. And it's a really great single target weapon that has good multiple enemy DPS options. So Clairvoyance is sick. Anarchy, you guys know what it is. Gross shotgun. Overpowered on Amara, especially when we're rocking shotgun damage, splash damage, scaling our movement off of our DPS with 155% increased weapon damage. This thing, if you want to just run Anarchy on this build, you can pretty much just one-shot every single thing in the game. So that's totally up to you. It's absolutely gross. The Unseen Threat, also crazy weapon. You basically one-shot anything with this. The Seventh Sense is gross. The Carrier is gross. The Lob is now one of the best single target weapons in the game. And if you want to use a Lob, you can totally do that. This build is very versatile and there's a lot of things that you guys can use. Conference Call, still amazing. Lastly, we got a new Guardian rank. We have Harmageddon now. Now, Harmageddon is basically going to give us Laid Bare. The more unique status effects on an enemy. This build already was using a lot of elements, so Harmageddon only increases our damage even more. Now, with this build, you want to be aiming for at least 3 different elemental damages. At least 3. So the recursion is a great choice. You don't need 50 ASE on this thing because now that we aren't using an elemental projector, before we were using one with plus 50 rad in the most recent update. I believe I have it on me here. Here we go. We were using plus 50 rad because we were mainly using the shock version of this, and we're using the elemental projector. Now we don't need to use ASC 50 because we can unmatch our action skill element from our weapon. So I'm using rad with shock, and then I've got radiation and I'll probably use the cryo with shock and radiation and corrosive. I should be using incendiary, and for the most part I use incendiary because otherwise I'm not getting any bonus damage out of my old god. But try for 4 elements. If you can get 5, that's awesome, but at least 3 and you will be good with this build. I hope you guys enjoyed. The save file will be dropped for this build. It's absolutely crazy. Make sure to give this a try if you guys are playing Amara. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe, like, and comment. Check me out over on Twitch if you want to see these builds made live. We should have the Chain Zane video, guys, for you soon. Take care, guys. Have a good one. Peace!